So now we are going to talk about interest on capital. Okay. What are we going to talk about? Interest on capital. Can you tell me what is interest on capital? Okay. So very good. You are saying that interest on capital is expense for the firm. Interest on capital, it is an expense for firm. And who is going to get it? Okay. The partner is going to get it. Now, what are the situations under which interest on capital is allowed? First thing, if you have a partnership deed, okay, if you have a partnership deed in that, now tell me, if you have a partnership deed, then how is interest on capital provided? If you have a partnership deed, then the interest on capital is provided as per the deed. Okay. If there is no partnership deed, if there is no partnership deed means what? If there is no partnership deed, that means we will follow what? We will follow the Partnership Act. And if we are following the Partnership Act, then what? Then interest on capital is not allowed. Okay. If there is a partnership deed, then we will give interest on capital as per the deed. If there is no partnership deed, then we follow the Partnership Act, and the Partnership Act does not provide for any interest on capital, does it, or it does not? It does not provide for any interest on capital. Okay. How do I calculate interest on capital? Interest on capital is calculated as the amount of capital, whatever is the rate, into 100 into the time period. Suppose your year is starting in Jan and it is ending in December. Okay? And capital is introduced in June. So interest on capital will be given from June to December. That is June, July, August, September, October, November, and December. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 months. So it will be given for 7 months. Are you with me? Now, there could be a situation where your partnership firm is making a profit. There could be a situation where your partnership firm is making a loss. And there could be a situation that you're making profits, but the profit is not sufficient. There could be a possibility. First thing you should remember is that interest on capital is provided only if you have a partnership deed. If you do not have a partnership deed, interest on capital will never be provided. Are you with me? Okay. Second thing you should know is whether interest on capital is a charge on profit or is it an appropriation of profit. Whether interest on capital is a charge on profits or whether it is an appropriation of profits. Understand, charge on profits is for outsiders. Appropriation of profit is for the firm and the partners. Okay, so interest on capital is an appropriation of profits. What is it? And where will it come? It is an appropriation of profits. Interest on capital is an appropriation of profits, and it will come in the profit and loss of appropriation account over here, and it will come in the partner's capital account or the current account credit side over here. Okay. Again, I am repeating, interest on capital will be allowed only if there is a deed. First thing. Only if there is a partnership deed, I will give interest on capital. Second, if I have profits, say profits is 20,000 and interest on capital is 2,000. I will give it. No problem. Okay. If I have a loss, will I give interest on capital? If I have a loss, interest on capital will not be given. Third situation is my profits is insufficient. Profits is insufficient. See, I have a profit of only 800, but interest on capital is 2000. So in that case, 800 will be distributed in their profit sharing ratio or the capital brought in ratio or whatever percent they have to be provided. So if I have an insufficient profit, interest on capital is allowed proportionately to the extent of profit. Okay? And profits are distributed in interest on capital ratio. This is the thing that you should remember. This is related to interest on capital. Usually, interest on capital, where does it come? Profit and loss appropriation account and partners capital or current account. Where will interest on capital come? Profit and loss appropriation account and partners capital or current account. Okay. But if the question tells you that treat your interest on capital as a charge, what does it tell you? Treat your interest on capital as a charge. What does it tell you? Treat your interest on capital as a charge. That means this is danger. What means it is danger? It will come in profit and loss account and it will come in partners capital account. Profit and loss account on the debit side, partners capital or partners current account on the credit side. So when they tell you treat interest on capital as a charge, if they tell you give interest on capital as a charge, that means you make profits or you do not make profits. Does not matter. You have to give full interest on capital. Okay. When they tell you what? Okay. Giving you journal entries for interest on capital. What am I giving you? Journal entries for interest on capital. Interest on capital is an expense for the home. Okay. What is the rule for nominal account? Can you tell me? Yes, I should begin. What is the rule for nominal account? Debit all expenses and losses, credit all income and gain. What is the rule for nominal account? Debit all expenses and losses, credit all income and gain. What is the rule for nominal account? So interest on capital is an expense for the firm. So I would say interest on capital debit. Okay. To whom is this given? So I will credit partner's capital or current account individually. This is the journal entry for interest on capital. What is the journal entry for interest on capital? Interest on capital debit because it is an expense and partner's capital account credit. Then I have to close the expense account. What I have to do? I have to close this expense account. So if I want to close the expense account, I will transfer it to the credit. Debit. To close the debit, I have to transfer it to credit. To close the debit, what do I have to do? Transfer it to the credit. So interest on capital is debit over here. I will close it so it will become interest on capital credit. And where will it go? Profit or loss appropriation account. Understand one thing. Interest on capital. Two places that it appears. What are the two places that it appears? Profit and loss appropriation account and partners capital account or current account. Here and here. Okay. Are you sure? Profit and loss appropriation debit and partners current account credit. But when I have to pass journal entries, there is two journal entries. First, I will create the expense. Interest on capital debit, partners capital credit. Then I will transfer it to the appropriation account. Appropriation debit, interest on capital credit. Again, the journal entry. Create the expense. Now, what is the entry to create expense? Partners capital account credit. Then I will close interest on capital and transfer to profit and loss account. So profit and loss appropriation debit, profit and loss appropriation debit, interest on capital credit. So this is all that is related to interest on capital account.